The serene town of Maple Creek had long spoken of Lily Monroe in hushed, mournful tones. Her disappearance in the autumn of 1997 was a wound that never fully healed, a ghost story that parents whispered to keep teenagers home by curfew. For 24 years, the case lived in dusty boxes in the police archive, a haunting collection of faded photographs, speculative notes, and a single, lonely sneaker found near the old railroad tracks. The initial fervor had died, leaving behind a hollow, perpetual question mark for her family. Each anniversary was a ritual of renewed grief, a silent scream into a void that offered no echo. The town moved on, but the shadow of that chilly October night remained, a stubborn stain on the community's conscience, waiting for a clue that seemed destined never to arrive. Lily was 19, a community college student with a laugh that could quiet a crowded room. She worked part-time at the local florist, her hands always subtly stained with earth or petals, and dreamed of opening her own studio. She was the kind of person who remembered everyone's birthday, who would stop to help a turtle cross the road, whose presence was a steady, warm light. Her life was a tapestry of ordinary, beautiful moments, study sessions at the library, late-night drives with friends, painting landscapes by the creek. She had just begun a tentative romance with a boy from her poetry class. To those who knew her, the idea that anyone would wish her harm was not just improbable, but a fundamental violation of the natural order, making her vanishing all the more shattering. On the night of October 17, 1997, Lily told her mother she was meeting a friend to study at the all-night diner on Route 9. She left her cozy, yellow-lit house at 8 p.m., wearing a navy peacoat and her favorite canvas sneakers. Witnesses confirmed she was at the diner, sipping coffee and highlighting a biology textbook, until just after 10 p.m. She was seen leaving alone. Her rust-colored Volkswagen Beetle was found the next morning, parked neatly behind the abandoned train depot, keys missing, driver's door slightly ajar. There were no signs of a struggle, no desperate cries heard. It was as if she had simply evaporated into the crisp night air, leaving behind only the silent car and a profound, unsettling stillness that would linger for decades. The first 48 hours were a whirlwind of door-knocking, search parties, and dragged waterways. The singular concrete clue was a partial palm print on the passenger window of her car, too smudged for a definitive match in the era's databases. Interviews revealed a local man, a known troublemaker with a petty theft record, who had been bothering Lily at the diner earlier that week. He had a shaky alibi about watching movies alone. Another lead pointed to a transient scene near the depot, but he had vanished like smoke. The investigation fixated on these figures, but without forensic evidence or a body, the detectives' hands were tied. The case quickly grew cold, the initial leads exhausted, leaving only a family's desperate hope and a town's collective suspicion aimed at a few flawed, familiar faces. For years, suspicion fell heavily on Lily's poetry class boyfriend, Mark. He was shy, awkward, and heartbroken, and his grief was misinterpreted as guilt by some detectives. A rumor swirled that they had argued about his jealousy. He moved away a year later, his departure seen by many as a confession in itself. Another red herring emerged a decade later when a convicted kidnapper, operating in a neighboring state, claimed in a jailhouse confession to have taken Lily. His detailed but factually wrong narrative wasted precious resources and reopened old wounds for nothing. Each false trail was a fresh torment for Lily's aging parents, who cycled through hope and despair, their lives suspended in a perpetual state of agonizing limbo, mistrusting shadows and jumping at every phone call. The breakthrough came from a sheer, stubborn act of hope. In 2021, Lily's sister, Anna, now a mother herself, petitioned for the case to be submitted to a private genetic genealogy lab. Detectives, having nothing left to lose, agreed. They used DNA extracted from the sweat and skin cells on Lily's recovered sneaker. The genetic profile was uploaded to a public database, searching for distant familial matches. The process was slow, a digital needle in a haystack of millions. But then, a hit, a third cousin in Oregon. From there, skilled genealogists built a sprawling family tree, branching outwards and backwards, slowly narrowing the focus down to one male line, one surname, in a town just 30 miles from Maple Creek. The tree pointed to a man named Robert Carson, a 58-year-old electrician and a respected, quiet family man with 2 grown children. He had lived in the region his entire life and had never been on any suspect list. In fact, he had helped with the initial search party for Lily in 1997. The genealogical data was compelling but not conclusive. Police needed a direct match. Detectives began a discreet surveillance operation, collecting a discarded coffee cup from Carson's truck. The DNA from that cup was compared to the profile from Lily's shoe. The lab report confirmed a match with statistical certainty. The genetic material on Lily's sneaker belonged to Robert Carson. The unassuming pillar of the community was now the prime suspect in a 24-year-old disappearance. Armed with the DNA evidence and re-interviewing old witnesses, a new narrative emerged. A waitress from the long-closed diner, her memory jarred, recalled seeing Carson there that night, sitting alone in a corner booth, watching Lily. He was irregular, invisible in his familiarity. Further digging revealed he had been quietly fired from a job in 1996 for inappropriate comments to a young female intern. The puzzle pieces, dusty and fragmented for so long, began to snap into a horrifying picture. Detectives obtained an arrest warrant, their hearts heavy with the weight of decades. They apprehended Carson at his home on a quiet Tuesday morning, his wife looking on in utterly shattered confusion, the facade of a normal life crumbling in an instant. The interrogation was a masterclass in patience. Carson, initially indignant and bewildered, slowly crumbled under the weight of the irrefutable DNA evidence. He claimed he had merely given Lily a jump start that night, a chance encounter. But the location of his DNA, on her shoe, not her car battery, contradicted his story. After 14 hours, faced with the detailed family tree and the silent, accusing science, his defenses broke. In a barely audible whisper, he confessed to seeing Lily struggling with her car, offering help, and then a sudden, violent impulse he could not explain or take back. He led them to a secluded, overgrown thicket in state forest land, a place he had passed countless times over the years, holding his terrible secret. In the damp, silent woods, under a canopy of indifferent trees, investigators found what remained. Lily's bones, still clothed in the fragments of her peacoat, were carefully unearthed. A forensic anthropologist confirmed the identity through dental records. The cause of death was determined to be blunt force trauma. The recovery, while grim, provided a perverse sense of closure for the waiting forensic team. This was no longer just a missing persons case, but a confirmed homicide with a suspect in custody. The Monroe family, though devastated by the finality, expressed a grim relief. After 24 years of wondering, praying, and imagining horrors, they could finally bring their daughter home to rest. The trial was a media circus, a haunting revisitation of 1990s Maple Creek. The prosecution's case was built on the bedrock of the genetic genealogy match and Carson's own confession, though his defense attorney tried to suppress it. The most powerful moment came when the coroner held up Lily's sneaker in court, the very item that had carried the silent, waiting truth for nearly a quarter-century. Carson's defense, a flimsy construction of coincidence and false memory, evaporated under the scientific testimony. The jury saw not the grandfatherly man in a suit, but the young electrician he once was, capable of a brutal, opportunistic crime. They deliberated for less than 6 hours before returning with a verdict. The word guilty echoed through the packed courtroom, a seismic release of long-held tension. Lily's mother, now white-haired and frail, closed her eyes, a single tear tracing the lines of her face. Robert Carson showed no emotion as he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Justice, in a legal sense, had been served. The monster was named, captured, and caged. Yet, the victory was profoundly Pyrrhic. It could not return Lily's laughter, restore her stolen future, or give back the decades of life her family spent in purgatory. The town's boogeyman had not been a stranger or a transient, but a man they had trusted, a fact that forever poisoned their sense of community safety. In the aftermath, Maple Creek struggled to reconcile its two truths: the peaceful town it believed itself to be, and the place where a killer had lived undetected for so long. The genetic genealogy technique was heralded as a miracle, a new weapon against time itself. Yet, for Lily's family, the cost of that miracle was incalculable. They had their answer, but it was an answer that arrived 24 years too late, a verdict that could not heal the annular rings of grief that had grown around their hearts. Robert Carson offered no motive beyond a moment of madness, a phrase that felt insultingly insufficient to encompass the totality of loss he had inflicted, leaving a different kind of haunting emptiness in its wake. Today, Lily Monroe's headstone in the town cemetery bears two dates: the year of her birth and the year her remains were finally laid to rest. The cold case files are closed, but the emotional ledger never will be. Her story is now a cautionary tale about the hidden monsters in plain sight and the relentless march of forensic science. The DNA test that solved the mystery also left an unresolved legacy of doubt and sorrow. For her sister Anna, there is a grim solace in having fought for the truth. She visits the grave often, speaking to Lily of a world that changed so much while she was gone, and of the long, belated journey to bring her justice, a journey that ended a mystery but could never truly bring peace. The case leaves a haunting, universal question lingering in the air: is justice ever truly possible when it is so profoundly delayed? The legal system rendered its judgment, but for the living, the sentence was already served in the decades of unknowing. Robert Carson will die in prison, a fact that brings little warmth to those who loved Lily. Her memory endures in the florist shop that still bears her favorite flowers, in the scholarship fund in her name, and in the determined silence of her family, who endured the unendurable. The mystery of why remains, locked within a murderer's conscience, a final, frustrating piece of the puzzle that science could not extract and the law did not require, a permanent stain on the town's history.